Hey folks, welcome back to another episode from Boots and Back Roads. In this episode, I am going to be installing a hitch reinforcement kit from Rodney Walker in Texas. We have a Thor Sequence 20L. Any of these camper build Class B vans, Thor, Winnebago, Pleasureway, sure there's a few others. If they have rear tanks, black tank, gray tank in the rear of the van, it is impossible to install any type of upgraded hitch other than what came with the van. This one has a current hitch installed by Thor, and basically it is a flat plate that bolts in two places, 3 bolts on this side, 3 bolts on this side, sandwiched between, the hitch is sandwiched between the bumper and the bumper bracket. There's nothing that goes under the van and connects it to the frame. As a result of that, anything that you put on the back of this hitch is very wobbly. I wouldn't trust it to haul a go-kart, but we have a Stowaway 2 box that we put on this, and I can grab the top of the box and probably flex it up and down about 5 or 6 inches. People that follow behind us say that it bounces up and down like crazy, and I know in the past this van has had a problem where a couple of the bolts that hold the hitch on have broken because of the flex. And if you follow any of the Class B forums, there's many instances of people on there that have actually had the bolts break, and whatever they were carrying back here just fell down onto the ground. So Rodney Walker in Texas was awesome enough to make kits for the Winnebago, and I guess enough of us reached out to him about the Thor that he now makes a bracket reinforcement kit for the Thor. And I have his kit right here, and I'm going to show you what's in the box. So it comes well packaged, and Rodney is a great guy to deal with. I highly recommend that if you have this hitch and you want to upgrade it, and you have a van with tanks in the back, you can't put the updated Kurt hitch on or the draw tight, that this is a great option. So he has detailed written instructions, pictures for pretty much each step of the install process. We have Thor driver side bracket, Thor passenger outside bracket, and I can see the little cutouts that he has for the hooks back here, and then a couple of these bolts, hardware included. These go up into the frame rail and are what you'll actually be screwing the hitch into, yep, if I had to guess. And then there's also hardware for the holes that you're going to have to drill here and here that go in the actual hitch that's on the van currently. And as you can see, my finger, he actually was good enough to put never sees on all this hardware before he shipped it to you. That's awesome. So I need to get some tools together to see what I need to do here. So stay tuned, I'll be right back. See, I got a floor jack, and I have lifted the back of the van probably 2 or 3 inches, enough to put a lot of weight on this hitch. And here's the reason why. Because of how these hitches are designed, carrying things on them, I have noticed with our van that when my stowaway is on here, the hitch is actually tipped back and the stowaway is tilted down. So when I put these brackets on, that is going to fix that hitch in whatever position it's in when I put the bolts in the frame and put the bolts in the bottom of the existing hitch. So one of the first recommendations is to put a floor jack or something under the hitch here, jack it up so that it's got some weight on it. So that's basically going to tip the hitch back into its original position before it's had all this weight and stuff put on it and kind of worked its way loose and tipped itself back a little bit. So first step is the floor jack, and the next step, I'm going to get under the van and pre-fit the brackets because I have to scrape off the factory undercoating where that bracket is going to meet up with the frame. I'm going to start with the passenger side. I'm going to take this and pre-fit it under the van and make a mark on my frame rail where this is going to be. So basically, so I can see that it is supposed to fit somewhere close to the center of the frame rail. But I'm going to slide it towards the front of the van a little bit because there's a nut back here that actually blocks. Can you see it? Mm-hmm. This nut will block you being able to install the bolt here. If I push it all the way back, it definitely looks like it's in the way. So I'm going to slide it ahead a little bit. I want this bracket to be centered on the frame. And this is kind of just a dry fit because I actually need to make a mark back here. And I'm going to have to, that tipped a little bit. Mark out this. All right. Now I've got it marked. So why I marked this is because I need to scrape all of that undercoating off of the van so that that bracket is sitting flush, metal on metal, as opposed to having some undercoating stuffed in between it. Maybe you don't have to do that, but Rodney recommends doing it, so we're gonna do it. There's many different ways that you can scrape that stuff off. You can use a utility knife, you can use a scraper knife, you can use a sheetrock trowel, putty knife, whatever. I'm going to use, this is my air grinder, and this is a paint rust stripping piece. Works pretty good. I've used it for many things. I'm not going to bore you with doing the whole thing, but essentially...
Down. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so get that finished up. I ended up using a little sheetrock trowel to get some of the bigger stuff off. I was able to basically just use the edge of it to kind of cut my outline. There were a couple little spots where I couldn't get my grinder into, and then I used this to just clean it up and get it down to bare metal. I found a couple of small pieces of metal, part of the frame, that were sticking up a little bit, so I was glad that I had this because I was able to grind those down flat. So now I have a nice flat surface on the driver's side to mount my reinforcement bracket, or actually the passenger side, sorry. And now I'm going to go over to the driver's side and do that one next. So now moving on to the driver's side bracket, and he writes Thor driver outside, meaning it goes this way, this towards the outside driver's side of the vehicle. And I'm going to get under and position this where I think is a good spot. Basically what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to avoid this nut. You know, you want this bracket to kind of be centered in the frame rail as much as you can, but he kind of has these stops built in here, so you can't bring it out past the end of the existing hitch. And I'm also trying to center the tab that's going to be mounted on the hitch itself, because I have to drill and tap 2 holes here and here. I want this centered as best as I can right here in the middle of this hitch, while also trying to keep this bracket centered and to keep that here away. I do not want to be way over here. And I can only be out about that far. So I like that there. So I've got that bracket kind of marked out. And again, like, what you scrape off doesn't look like has to be the final position. I'm just trying to get that undercoating off so that I've got clean metal to metal contact, and then I'm actually going to adjust that bracket a little bit differently probably to make the holes that I'm going to need to drill into the frame itself, the hitch, and then the frame itself. I have got the undercoating scraped off both sides. Like I said, a combination of my grinder with a paint removal disc and my trowel and a little scraper. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some painter's tape on the bottom of the existing hitch because it's black, and I only have a black Sharpie to mark my holes. I don't have a silver Sharpie or something like that. So I'm going to put a little bit of tape on the very bottom. Just kind of like right there. Just give me something to write on. I'm going to go over and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now I'm going to grab working on the driver's side because I'm here anyway. I'm going to put this in and get it centered, or get it positioned how I guess I like it. So I'm really going to hug the inside of the frame rail because I need to avoid that nut. And I think that's where I'm going to do it. So I've got both my brackets marked on the frame rails where I want to drill my holes. I'm going to take you underneath with me. So here's my tape on the bottom of the hitch and the 2 holes that I have for the passenger side. And then my holes on the frame rail. Now what I'm hoping to avoid by being a little off center is this nut. I don't want that to get in my way. Now what I've found with this bracket, with brackets on both sides, the most important holes in my opinion are the 4 that are going to be on your hitch. You've got the 2 here on the driver's side, passenger side, and then you've got the 2 over here on the driver's side. You have to drill and tap these 2 holes, and I wanted these holes to be as center of the width, thickness of this hitch as possible. I don't want them out here on the end or the edge. So in order for that to happen with both of these brackets, where the bracket mounts here to the frame, it's tipped a little bit in towards the middle of the van. It's not perfectly square with this frame rail. If I had done that, then this hole here would have been way out on the end of that. I'm not sure why, but that's how this one lined up, and the one on the other side as well. Okay, now I'm back over here on the driver's side position. So again, You can see the marks. I tried to center these as much as I could, the width of the hitch, and it ended up with this hole. I'm over a little bit to avoid this nut. I'm not directly in front of it. That's about middle of the frame rail. This is a little bit off to the side. This bracket was a little bit more square, so when I centered these, I was a little bit more square on my frame rail. Was tipped a little bit in towards the center of the van. I guess this way a little bit, but a little bit more square than the one on the passenger side. So now I just got to drill some holes. Next step, now that I've got all my holes marked, I'm going to drill the holes in the frame first. They are 3/8 fine thread bolts. I'm going to use a 3/8 drill bit. I've noticed the first issue that you're going to run into, and that is the drain piping for your gray tank goes right across the middle of where that bracket's going to be. So the center hole in that bracket is only about that far. The piping is only about that far below that hole. So how do you get that in there, right? Well, I had to use a combination of my small bits to make a pilot hole at an angle, work my way up through to 3/8, and then because I was at such an angle trying to get that hole, I was worried that the bolt wouldn't go down through it straight, so I had to grab one of my large 3/8 bits so that I could get my drill bit way down, and even then this almost was contacting the pipe, so I wasn't able to get a nice square hole up through. I was at a little bit of an angle, and I used my drill to just kind of ream this around a little bit and make that hole a little bit bigger than 3/8 of an inch. And I can show you what I was dealing with. Here's my valve for my gray tank, and you can see its position. There's my 3 holes. One here, one here, one here. And trying to get your drill into that hole, this is in your way big time. So, like I said, I had to just get a pilot hole started, and then I ended up having to go to a really long drill bit so that I was able to get my drill down here at a better angle to go up by this pipe and get into that hole. Yeah. So one of the things I noticed when I was drilling out that side, the first 2 holes I did with the 3/8 drill bit, and it wanted to walk on me a little bit because I probably should have used pilot points, but I didn't have any. So on this side, I have good access to all 3. I'm going to do small pilot hole first, and then I'm going to finish it with the 3/8 bit. All right, so a couple of things. One, make sure you weigh these when you're drilling those holes. And probably some gloves, because if people think that the ProMaster is a weak, lightly built vehicle, the frame on this thing is actually pretty thick. I mean, it's at least 1/4 inch, maybe even 3/8 of an inch thick. So there's a lot of metal coming off that drill bit when you're drilling holes through the frame. And yeah, you want to protect the hands and protect the face. So the next step that I'm going to do, it's not in the instructions. It's something that after looking at the instructions, seeing what I've done up to this point, which is drill all 6 of the frame holes, all of these for both brackets. These 2 holes that are going to be drilled into the hitch itself under here, they have to be drilled and tapped to 3/8 fine thread. And I have to use a specific size drill bit in order to do that. So what my fear is that if I drill those holes as marked and I put this together and one of these holes is off a little bit, or I have to adjust this hitch a little bit, I might not be able to get those really important threaded holes lined up correctly. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to mount both of these brackets with the piece that he gives you to bolt them to, and I'm going to get them in place, snugged up but not tight, to make sure that these two holes, what I have marked in the hitch, is going to be lined up. And if I have to adjust it a little bit, now's the time to do it, before I bolt everything together. So when I'm talking about the next step and doing, you know, kind of pre-mounting these things to see where the hitch holes line up, this is the metal bracket that Rodney gives to you guys. And essentially, you have to take all these bolts out, and this fits in a small square hole that's already in the frame rail of the van. You're basically going to fish this up through, and then he gives you a little handle right here that you can manipulate this around to line these three holes up with the holes that you drilled in the frame. And then once you've got that done, you have to fit this in place and kind of try to get everything all lined up so that you can put your bolt up through here into the bracket and screw it in place, and this kind of sandwiches it into the frame. And I'm going to show you where this goes next. In the frame rail, this bracket is going to fish up through there. It's going to kind of go into no man's land. And then you just fish it back and line it up with your holes. Now it's in place. And now I can take my hitch, get this in place, and then I'm going to put the screws up through and try desperately, and what I'm assuming is going to be a little bit difficult, to get that started. There we go. It sucks, I'm going to have to do that twice. Okay, 2 out of 3. Almost. Nice. All right, so I have test fit the passenger side bracket, put this up in the frame rail, slid this in place, was able to get everything bolted up fine, temporarily, checked the position of these two holes on the underneath of the factory hitch, and they lined up great. So now I can drill and tap these two holes and not worry about anything being out of alignment. One thing I will note, it is very tricky getting this all put together up in the frame rail, because when you put the first bolt in, this thing's just kind of free floating around. So you kind of, what I did is I started on the end, and then I did this one, and then I did the middle one. I think to make your life a little bit easier, and what I might actually do right now before I bolt everything up, is I'm going to take my drill and I'm going to just ream those holes out a little bit to give me a little bit more play, so that I make sure I don't cross thread one of these into the welded on bolt. So now I need to check the other side and see where we're at.
A few moments later.
Now I need to drill pilot holes and start tapping the 4 holes in the hitch. So you'll see here, this is a Q size drill bit. We need to drill and tap those 4 holes on the hitch to 3/8 by 24 fine thread. Now, On the tap, it says to use a 21/64 drill bit. In the instructions, Rodney says, I believe, an 11/32 drill bit. Well, I have a pretty good tap and die set with a chart, and in the machining world, the Q drill bit is the appropriate size drill bit for a 3/8 by 24 fine thread. You can get away with a 21/64, so it's going to be a little bit tighter. You can get away with an 11/32. It's going to be a little bit bigger. This Q drill bit kind of splits the difference. So I bought 2 of these on Amazon. I'll include the link in the description, and I'll also include a link to the taps that I bought. I have that tap in my set, but I didn't know how hard of a steel the hitch would be made out of, and I just wanted to make sure that I had a couple of brand new taps for doing that. I have tapped all 4 of those holes with, I think I used a 1/4-inch drill bit. The steel on the hitch is surprisingly softer than the frame of the ProMaster. It was pretty easy to drill those 4 holes through with a 1/4-inch drill bit, and now I've got my Q drill bit on, and I'm going to drill all 4 holes in the bottom of this hitch for those 3/8 bolts. This is the tap that I'm going to use. Bought this on Amazon. It says here 21/64. I used a Q machining drill bit as opposed to a 21/64. But that's 3/8 by 24 fine thread. So now I'm going to tap both of those, or all 4 of those holes. Now I can see how position side side. All right, so now moment of truth. I've got all 4 of the holes on the hitch tapped out to this 3/8 by 24 fine thread bolt. I've checked the threads. Everything appears to be good. Now I need to place the keyway up into the frame. Goes in like that. And then kind of assemble everything together, and I'm going to loose fit everything first. I'm going to get all 5 bolts started. I'm not going to tighten anything down. All right, get that all squared up. Cut that one first. I was able to get that bracket in place. Had to manipulate, you know, the keyway that goes in the frame a little bit with a long screwdriver. Just kind of put it in there to get it positioned right. I got the bolt closest to the bumper started, the one further in started, then I did the middle one last, and then I did the 2 here on the frame, on the hitch, and basically I'm able to get at everything with a 9/16 socket, but the one that is closest to the hitch, there is that nut in there for the bottom hitch bolt, where the hitch is mounted from the factory. There's 2 bolts up high and 1 down here, and that the head of one of the bolts with the kit is very, very close to the bottom nut that holds that on. So when you're drilling that hole, be mindful of that to make sure that you've got enough room to sneak that by that bolt. Like I said, it's close enough. I can't get a socket on it. I have to use a 9/16 wrench to tighten that one up. So I'm just going to tighten everything down and see what it looks like. So I've got all of the bolts snug down, and the next thing I was wondering was, what's the torque spec on these? So there's no torque spec given in the directions for this kit, so I had to look up the bolt. They're a stainless steel hardened bolt, but they are not marked as a grade 8, grade 5 or grade 2. And what I found online is that because they're a stainless hardened bolt, their grading is somewhere between a grade 2 and a grade 5. So the spec that I got was 25 to 33 foot-pounds, depending on if you use anti-seize or not. There is some anti-seize on those bolts, but I'm gonna try 30 foot-pounds and see where that goes. I snugged it down pretty good without a torque wrench, but I think I'm gonna be around 30 to 33 foot-pounds. So let me check that and I'll let you know. Installing. That about wraps it up. I was able to get the driver's side one on. It really took a lot of finagling because not being able to drill squarely into the middle bolt because the gray tank drain is in the way. I was really off by, I was thinking maybe like 1/8 of an inch. It was more like 1/4 of an inch. So I really had to put my long drill bit on, get back under there, and just kind of ream that hole side to side. I didn't want to go back to back with it because that's the way that the hitch is going to be pushing against those brackets. But side to side shouldn't affect, you know, the strength of those brackets at all. So once I did that, I was able to get everything lined up and everything bolted up great. I highly recommend drilling. Once you put the brackets in place and you mark your holes, drill the 3 frame holes for both brackets and then do a dry fit. Put the keyway in there, put your 3 bolts in there, and just make sure that this bracket stays lined up for these 2 holes where they drill into the hitch, because like I said, these have to be drilled and tapped. There's no room for error on those 2 on either side. That, I think, helped me immensely, being able to get everything kind of dry fit, seeing that I had to elongate my holes a little bit in the middle because of that pipe that's in the way. Passenger side, no problems whatsoever. That went on easy. You know, a little bit of finagling. I just used a long screwdriver to reach up and just kind of get that thing positioned. And I wanted to talk again about the torque specs. There's no torque spec that comes in the kit. It's not written on the paperwork. They're stainless steel fine thread bolts. They're pretty strong, but everything that I was able to find, I was looking at around 25 to 33, 34 foot-pounds. I split the difference. I did 30 foot-pounds, and I was able to get 30 foot-pounds of torque on all 5 of those bolts for each hitch bracket. And otherwise, I think it went good. I'm excited to see how well it works. All right, so now that I've got everything back together, we remembered one more thing. The exposed portions of the frame rail where the brackets mount to, I took off a little bit more of the factory undercoating than was necessary. So there is some exposed spots under there, and you know, it would probably be a good idea to, you could either paint it to match, or you could put some fluid film or wool wax or something like that. Just spray it down there along that, you know, where the bracket meets the frame and where that exposed metal is. If you don't live in a Rust Belt area, then I suppose you don't have to worry about it. But if you do, you might want to put some undercoating on it. And the other thing, this project, start to finish, if I was able to do it all in one shot, probably took me around 3 to 3.5 hours total. make sure you have some good drill bits and the proper taps, and I will link all of that stuff online in the description so that if you guys need anything, you'll know where to find it. I'm gonna try to... How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Alright, we're gonna be serious now. You still rolling?
Yeah, what are you doing?
I'm just
Admiring your tape job?
making sure that I have everything else good.